Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Language of Leadership. I'm your host, Chuck Marting. These last couple of weeks have been a whirlwind for me. I just got back from traveling, having gone to the NDASA National Conference. It was an incredible conference. I was able to do some training at that conference, and I also spoke at that conference on the topic that I'm very passionate about, which is how the psychedelic movement that we're seeing with psychedelic drugs that we're seeing right now, how it's impacting employers and what they need to look for to protect themselves and also protect their workplace. Now, I was able to meet with quite a few leaders, men and women I've come to know very well, people that I've turned to for guidance and direction in my own life and in my business. And we began to talk a lot about leadership and the different things that we're seeing and the different things that we're experiencing. And we were trying to decide, how is it the best way for us or for other leaders to lead in these days that we have, with laws changing constantly, where employers are being attacked, sometimes even within by their own employees. And it made for a very interesting conversation. Now, I talked to everybody from attorneys to men that I've been in this position of leadership with for a lot of different years. And I talk to people that are in positions in Fortune 500 companies, people that are just starting out with their businesses. But we've all have the same concern, and that's leadership and what is being experienced by those leaders right now. And it caused us to have some reflection on a lot of different things. Now, it was during this time that I talked to a couple leaders that I've come to know very well. And I expressed to them my concern of what I'm seeing right now with leadership within the workplace, how all these things are affecting leadership, and what my plans were, how I felt I was able to contribute back by doing things such as this podcast, being able to talk to people. And I talked to them about some of the things that I've been working on, and something that I'm going to be talking to you about here in just a little bit. I'm going to be making an announcement here to all of you on the language of leadership. I have seen a lot of different leadership styles. And it was with that, and because of what I've experienced going into different workplaces, that I've decided that I needed to do something and I needed to give back to all of you. I needed to be able to help leaders. And I've had some one-on-one coaching opportunities with some of these leaders. And based on those interactions that I've observed with them and their teams, things that were pretty detrimental, that would cause a very big risk for not only their leadership, but also for their team. But then I saw some things that were really good, and things that I talked to leaders afterwards, and I asked, how did you come up with this? What did you do? Who taught this to you? Just to get some insight myself so that I can learn and become better, because I'm constantly learning, just like all of you. But I wanted to be able to bring this information back to all of you. So after many months of contemplation, meditation, thoughts and feelings and discussions with not only my mastermind, but also with my family, I was approached by a very good friend of mine, a man that I respect very much. And it was curious that he reached out to me via email about a seminar that he and his publisher were having, and asking if I would be willing to attend that seminar. And I also was able to talk to this person that is doing the seminar with him, and it was going to be on writing a book. Now, it's funny because I had just talked about this very subject with my wife and with some family members, that it was something that I wanted to do. And not even an hour after this conversation, I received this email, and the same email that I'm talking to you about right now. So after receiving this email, I reflected on leaders that I've seen and that I've learned from making choices and decisions every day, how it affects them. And I remembered people that were being placed in leadership positions that had no training, no experience or anything, and they were just put in those positions, and how lost those individuals were. So I truly feel like right now is the time, with all the things that we're seeing in the media, things that we're experiencing with leaders right now, things that I've seen, I've witnessed, all of these challenges that employers are facing. I felt that this was the time to write this book. And it's funny how you put all these things out to the universe, and then things start falling into place. Now, the person that I'm referring to, the person that called me, was Jack Canfield. He got a hold of me with Steve Harrison through an email, and being able to talk with both of them, I feel it confirmed what I've been thinking about for some time now. It was something that I decided that I wanted to do, that I was going to write a book. And the book that I'm going to write is going to be titled Fortified Leadership: Defending Your Business from Substance-Related Abuse. Now, prior to this seminar with Jack and Steve, I sent my book, my ebook that I had done previously, to Jack Canfield. And it was a book that I put together for one of my trainings. It was the only thing that I've ever even written. And it was just an ebook. And Steve Harrison looked at it as well. And afterwards, they both agreed that, yeah, I had something, a message that needed to come out to all of you. So I explained to them that my writing of this book, I wanted to define leadership, and I wanted to try hitting it from a totally different perspective. I feel that Fortified Leadership describes this process the best. And I want to share just a little bit from the writing in this book. I want to share one of the stories that I've put into the book, and it's about exceptional leadership. And it inspired me. It inspired me to view and to experience the loyalty in this. And it was in a very challenging industry. And it was one of those industries that you've all heard of, and it's the gas and oil field industry. And, I went to this company. It was one of these small companies that I was dealing with, but I saw a commitment to leadership in the vision and the value of this employer by its team. And I saw its leaders exceeding professional leadership in no other way that I've ever seen. I saw this team that was so committed to the vision and the value of their employer and also their leaders, that not one, not two, but the whole entire team made a permanent decision. They made permanent their dedication to this employer and to its leaders by tattooing the logo of the company on their body. It was a symbol of their unwavering loyalty. Now, don't get me wrong, it's a great looking logo. But the question that I found myself asking is, why in the world would a team do something like this that would be a permanent part of their body forever? It raises a deeper question, though, of just what is so special about these leaders that it would drive such remarkable loyalty. Advocacy groups and employers are pushing for personal rights to override employers' rules, and especially if they can allow this use of recreational drugs into our workplaces. And we've experienced that here in the state of Colorado, with civil rights attorneys coming out and arguing that it's the employee's right to use these drugs, and that the employer should not interfere, but just accept their right to be able to do so and deal with the consequences in the workplace later. That puts these businesses in a very delicate situation. So you have employers that are confused, that we're letting employees do whatever they want because what an employee does on their own time is their own time. But unfortunately, if it carries over into the workplace, now it becomes the employer's problem. It becomes a safety issue. It becomes a workplace issue. And so with that, there's this struggle in what we're seeing in the workplace. Now, in contrast to the loyalty of this oil field crew that I just talked about, it shows that the relationship between leaders and their team can be very unique. And this team, it was based on high standards, mutual support, and a commitment to the excellency and quality that they were doing. This is starkly different from anything else that we've seen from a leadership standpoint and what we're seeing leadership being attacked for right now. Now, what is the definition of fortified leadership? And why would I use that? Well, fortified leadership is a model of leadership that combines inherent strength and exemplary character, and it embraces success. It embraces the success principles of leadership, but it also emphasizes the power of setting clear goals and also maintaining an accountability. Now, a fortified leader is actively listening and communicating effectively with his team. They also foster an environment that not only motivates, but it also challenges. And it also inspires team members to want to achieve their best. This type of leadership cultivates a strong commitment from the team where members are driven not just to succeed, but also uphold the trust and the expectations adhered to. There's many examples that I'm going to be sharing in the book that show exceptional leadership, and that it can be navigated in these challenging times that we're living in. Fortified leadership is the ability to enhance the team's dynamics, their productivity, and the overall success of this team. Now, with that being said, I want to be able to share with you what Jack Canfield talked to me about. I'm going to talk a little bit about the seminar that I went to, and when I decided to go ahead and go forward with this book. And it's based on my experience and the things that I've experienced and I've seen and that I've communicated with different leaders through coaching and masterminds. So with that, I want to introduce you to Fortified Leadership. The interview that I gave with Jack Canfield and the process in writing this book. The book right now, it's not available. It's not being published yet, but it's in the works. I'm writing it right now. I'm about halfway through, and I'm anticipating being able to launch this book by the end of this year. My personal goal is to have it done before the holiday season, and I'm doing my best to be able to do that. But in my mind, I wanted to be able to have that goal for the first year, and I wanted to have it available by the first of the year. But my personal striving goal is to have it done before the holiday season. So you're going to hear in the next few weeks more about this book and some of the things, some of the topics that I'm going to be sharing with you in this book. But in the meantime, I want to share my screen with you and be able to share this interview that I did with Jack Canfield for you to be able to experience and hear what we talked about. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you really quick, make sure that we can hear everything. And I'm going to go ahead and do that with you right now.
Hi, I'm Jack Canfield, author of The Success Principles and co-author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. And I'm here today at the Author's Success Retreat that I do with Steve Harrison. And I want to introduce you to one of our attendees, Chuck Marting. Now, drawing on his qualifications as a retired law enforcement officer and current entrepreneur, Chuck empowers leaders with the confidence to address workplace drug and alcohol impairment. He provides them with effective communication skills and the ability to recognize and verify signs of impairment, leveraging his expertise as a trained drug recognition expert, all contributing to the cultivation of a supportive workplace culture. Chuck, talk about how the work you do helps others, especially, I think, business people, really important. So give us a little clue.
Thanks, Jack. You know, one of the biggest things that concerns me is that substance abuse in the workplace is costing employers $81 billion a year. Wow. That's a staggering amount of money. Absolutely. And a lot of that is contributed to leaders not understanding or knowing how to recognize signs and symptoms. One of the easy things that I teach employers and leaders is that one of the things that they can do is just look at people's eyes, look at their pupils. The eyes are the window to the soul, and that's one of the things that is one of the telltale signs of drug impairment is being able to see that in people's eyes.
So you've written a book that really Well, you've written, you're writing a book right now. You've written another book for people that are in that world, and I read one of them, and I just have to tell you, it's so complete. You're such a you know a lot about something that most people don't know anything about. Talk for just a moment, if you would, about the fact that it's one thing to know that, or at least have the suspicion that something's going on, that perhaps this person needs to be drug tested or alcohol tested, whatever. But there's a fear that a lot of people have of confrontation. And so therefore maybe that doesn't happen. And then it leads to accidents that could hurt people in the workplace, could hurt people out on the road when the driver's impaired. Can you talk about that for just a moment?
Sure. One of the things that we see a lot is people get scared because a lot of this deals with addiction. So they know they're going to be drug tested. And so they try to bring adulterants into the workplace. And a lot of times you have supervisors or leaders that are unaware that this happens. And so we're able to go to employers and say, this is why you don't have this individual come to our facility by themselves. This is why you don't have somebody go without a supervisor going with them to prevent them from trying to grab these type of things and using them to pass their drug test. If they don't, you could have a supervisor or even a owner of a business lose their business right then and there because you end up having an individual that is using that. They're not going to go after that individual. They're going to come after the company for allowing this person to drive and not knowing that they're either cheating on their drug test or that they're abusing substances and going to work.
Mm. How big a problem do you think that is? If you could guess, or from your own experience, say what percent of the American workforce is coming to work impaired?
That's a good question. I think from our experience, what we've seen anywhere from 15 to 20% of the people in a workplace can be abusing and using substances without any knowledge or understanding of that. And a lot of that goes undetected because, like I was saying before, we have leaders and supervisors that just do not know what to look for in being able to identify that.
Interesting. And what I didn't know when I read your book too was how people can cheat on their tests, like by bringing in their wife's urine instead of their own, or something like that. There was a wake up call for me to just be aware that there's such a clever, what's the word I want, network of people that support each other in cheating the system, if you will.
Yeah, it's amazing. We, between the two offices that I have, will get 8 to 10 synthetic or adulterated specimens a day. And it's just incredible when you're able to show supervisors this. I do a lot of training with supervisors, and I'll come in with a box and I just dump this on the table to show them this is why you don't have that guy go to his car by himself, or say, I don't know where my ID is. I need to go get it, and just let him go because this is what he's going to go and get.
Mm.
And, it's nothing magical that we do. It's just we're following the steps during the drug testing process, looking for clues that an individual is giving us something. So we're just not going through the motions of it. And I think that's what's important for leaders to understand, is that there's a process in this. And if you have somebody that doesn't go through this process, they're going to miss that. And it's going to be a liability to your company.
Yeah, well, very good. Well, I love the expertise that you have and you demonstrate in your work. So thank you for that. And thank all of you for joining us for these 2 minutes a day. And here's where you can go to get more in touch with Chuck and more information about him, his companies, his work, and his books.
I hope you enjoyed that short interview that I did with Jack Canfield. It was something that was truly amazing to be able to do. Another, to be able to have somebody come to you and see that as part of you. It's something I've worked very hard on, and to be able to share with all of you, because I am very passionate about this. I'm very passionate about leadership, and I'm also very passionate about you being able to protect what you've worked so hard for. So, as I shared earlier, we'll be discussing Fortified Leadership and exploring some of the book's key insights in the weeks to come. So trust me, you're not going to want to miss it. Thank you for joining me today, for being part of this announcement that I'm making. But I want you to remember, Leadership is a language, and every conversation is an opportunity to strengthen your influence and your impact. So until next week, keep leading with purpose and passion. And remember that there are tools and there are things out there that are going to help you become not only a better leader, but also to be able to lead your team in a way that you're going to feel the impression that they have, and you're going to be able to see the difference that you're going to be able to make in their lives. So until next week, when we bring another episode of The Language of Leadership to you, take care.